Joining me is the panel, Steve Conroy, former Labor Senator and Cabinet Minister, Liberal Senator Hollie Hughes. Hollie, I mean, this, if we say no to the voice, we can't criticise China. Seriously?
This debate seems to be getting completely lost in hyperbole and threats. It's just unbelievable. And if you just take it through from where we had Noel Pearson telling us that we would live in a perpetual state of protest if Australia voted no, to now comparing Australia to China with its record on human rights is absolutely deplorable. It is unbelievable that this is the kind of language that is being used. But for anyone who does support the Yes campaign and wonders why it is floundering and why it is failing so poorly and going so absolutely terribly among the Australian people, is because they don't like to be called racists. They don't like to be called human rights abusers because they are not. And that is exactly the language that these absolutely hysterical claims around if you don't vote for yes, somehow we'll lose our position on the world stage, that we won't be able to stand up to China. I'm sorry, you know, putting apartheid in a law didn't go too well for South Africa, and effectively that is what this change of the Constitution would be, a division of Australians by race.
Stephen Conroy, can you understand what's going through these people's mind, these Labor senior figures' minds, that they would say, no to the voice means we can't criticise Communist China?
Well, I'll be criticising Communist China, whatever the outcome, and I hope the yes case wins.
I know that.
But if you want to look at some of the language, and Noel Pearson is probably the most egregious, I think it was deeply unhelpful to the campaign, some of the commentary he's made. I'm disappointed in some of the focus when people get a chance to spruik publicly. Talk about the positives, talk about why it's necessary, talk about why the things that we've all tried so far have failed, and that this is an opportunity. I don't accept, Andrew, your continual attempt to describe it as a parliament. This is an advisory body.
A kind of advisory parliament, and I stand by that.
When you use the word parliament, when you use the word parliament, Andrew, you give it an implication that it passes laws when there's no such implication.
Advisory parliament. That's why I say advisory parliament.
It's an advisory body that advice can be accepted. When you put the word parliament in there, Andrew, you know that that implies that it becomes law.
Oh, that's only because, Stephen, this is clearly a stalking horse for sovereignty down the track.
Well, if you want to argue about
reparations, treaty.
They're not what
we don't know, Stephen, and this is one of the problems. We don't know. We don't know what the High Court's going to say. And if you don't think the very first legislative decision that's made by a government, if this voice is successful, won't be challenged in the High Court if it doesn't somehow or other completely appease those people appointed, elected, who knows how they'll get there as part of the voice, that it won't go to the High Court. We don't know. We don't know, Stephen, and nobody does.
Breaking news, any law passed by the Australian Parliament, anybody can take to the High Court. That's called a democracy. It's a good thing. So let's be very clear about
But it's also not written into the Constitution that they must take the advice of this body.
They must take the advice. No, they can listen to the advice. They don't have to take the advice. That is a misrepresentation, Hollie, and you know it.
No, I've been in Cabinet.
Well, no, Greg Craven didn't seem to think so.
Look, I've been in Cabinet. We passed a law, or attempted to pass a law, to do with refugees and Malaysia. And the High Court ruled on a challenge supported by the Liberal Party that it was unconstitutional because we didn't guarantee that they could get education and health and a variety of other government services in Thailand. None of them were available in Nauru or Manus Island. Let me be very, very clear about that. So all laws can be challenged. The sort of administrative process of listening to advice is very normal. There was a challenge to a law that Labor passed to do with live,
Stephen,
sheep exports.
I think we're going down a side alley here. We're going down a side alley here.
I'm pointing out.
I don't know why it's got to be the Constitution. If the government needs constitutional reform to listen to Australians, if the Australian government, current Albanese government, needs something in the Constitution to tell them to listen to stakeholders.
Can I interrupt you both? The straw man argument here is that the High Court will say you can't act Parliament, you can't act federal public servant until you've heard from the voice. You can ignore it, but and so that effectively is going to delay and be an effective veto on that. That is the real argument, Steve, not what you've been saying. Yeah, but listen, all that's to be in the future.
That's a fair point to make. That's a much fairer point to make in the way than describing it as an advisory parliament. It's a fair way to describe your criticism, Andrew. I have no issue with that. But equally, the points I've been trying to make today is there's a whole bunch of processes in existing law that you must go through a process. And if you fail to go through that process, and the High Court case on live sheep went to the heart of that, it was our government, we made a decision, and the ultimate finding of the High Court was we didn't follow proper process. We didn't listen and hold go through the right
Stephen, you're actually confirming my problem. You're actually confirming exactly my problem, that we have a racist body, one race in the country. By the way, are they, by what mean, how are they Aboriginal? One body of unelected, selected 22 activists will have this enormous power granted to no other race in this country, and you say it will have a real impact. That scares me. That is disastrous.